Welcome back, Grace Bible Church, to another episode of Living by the Book. Pastor Rick, welcome back for another one. I think we're well into the hundreds as far as we're into the
113, 114.
Yeah, we're cranking away. That's over 2 years worth of material.
Yep.
So we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
And people still watch them. So there you go. Some.
It's an attriting crowd.
We'll take what we can get.
That's right.
Where beggars can't be choosers.
No.
My question today, I think one of the topics that we go back to a lot is parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because parenting is really difficult. And there's new challenges on a weekly basis, I think, as a parent who's in the midst of it right now. And even for you, you are still a parent in the midst of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're still finding that you're still parenting, even with adult children. One of the things you've said a number of times in different episodes and in different contexts is that, when your child rebels, that rebellion is always against relationship and not just the rules. So it's about the relationship you have with your child. And we've talked a fair amount about that. My question today is, how do you then, how do you build that relationship? Because obviously parenting requires the instruction, the discipline, providing a structure in the home, training. But how do you maintain that relationship where even in the midst of all that, the child knows that they're safe with you, that there's protection with you, that they're loved by you? So, maybe you can share even just from your personal experience how you and Pat fostered, relationship with your kids. And then even if you can, a little bit kind of talk about how that looked different at different stages of your child's development, like babies to toddlers to elementary, teens, and then even now as adults, just to help kind of all the parents at whatever stage they're at.
Yeah.
And that's a loaded question. So, as much as you're able to be concise, and maybe this becomes a two-part.
Concise? Wash your mouth out. So
I know that's the word we're not supposed to say.
That's right. Yeah. Well, let me take a stab at it.
Yeah.
I think with reference to how to convey love and so on to your children, I think in order to be authentic, it cannot be manipulative. In other words, love must be without hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. Romans 12 tells us.
Yep.
In other words, it can't be a show, or it can't be, manipulative to get your children to like you or to, do what you want them to do, or those kind of things.
Right.
And I think that goes back, and I don't want to just give the Sunday school answer. Jesus is the answer, but. Mm-hmm. He is.
But he is. But you're going to give it anyways because it's the right answer, yeah.
We are mentored in our love by his love for us, right? John tells us we love because he first loved us. And so our love is an emulation or an imitation of his love for us. So in order to love other people, it's necessary that, and a prerequisite is that we are knowing the love of Christ. Mm-hmm. So being in a fruitful, vibrant, genuine, and authentic relationship with Jesus Christ, whereby you know his love for you and you rejoice in his love for you, gives you then the ability to love others, whether it's a spouse or whether it's a friend, a church member, or your children. Mm-hmm. You desire to love them in a manner that you are being mentored in how to love by Christ.
And would you say that love is particularly, that love without hypocrisy? Because obviously, a parent who's not a believer probably loves their children, but is there something lacking in that because they are not experiencing that love of Christ, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, the children of unbelievers turn out okay. Mm-hmm. In other words, there are responsible citizens who are, but they don't have the spiritual dimension of intimacy together before the Lord in Christ Jesus. Mm-hmm. So there's an element where their love for their children is not it's a natural love, but it's not necessarily a pure love, because love of an unregenerate is usually self-oriented. So they love their children because of how their children make them feel. They love their children because of the significance that their children brings to them. They love their children because they have help around the house, or whatever it could be. And unregenerate expression of love or motivation for love, an unregenerate person has it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not to suggest they can't sacrifice for their children, they can't provide well for their children,
Right.
but the motivation for that is usually somehow self-oriented.
Okay.
Right. And the love that is without hypocrisy is not a self-oriented love. It's not a love that primarily seeks to gratify itself. Right. So it's a love that is only able to be known through the mentoring of God's Spirit through Jesus Christ. Right. So I yearned to be consistently observing the love of Christ for me in my relationship with Christ. And then one of the ways by which I honored my Lord was to demonstrate that same kind of love for my children. And it's about them. Jesus doesn't love us so that he can feel good. He loves us so that we could know his goodness and rejoice in it. Right. So it's about our redemption. And the same is true of my love for my children. I desired to love them in such a way that would track them to me for the purpose of pointing them then to Christ. So that my love for them would condition them to appreciate Christ's love for them, right? Because it's the same. Well, of the same flavor, not the same value.
From the lesser to the greater. Yeah.
But there's this understanding of that, my representation of Christ to my children, so that when they love me, it's not that big of a pivot for them to love Christ. Right. So that's how I'm trying to love my children. Okay. And when your children are unlovable, when you're loving them so as to attract them to show them Christ, your love for them is not based on their performance or on their attitudes or on their behavior. It's about your love for Christ. And he demonstrated his love toward us, and that while we're yet sinners, he died for us. So it isn't waiting for us to merit that love. It is a love that is intended to induce love in response, right? So even if they're misbehaving, they're brats, they're rebellious, they're sassy, they're disobedient. Your love for them is designed to draw them toward yourself and then ultimately toward the one you represent. So that's how you're loving them. And of course, there is gratification in that. So it's not without its reward. So I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy loving my kids. It was all about them. It wasn't about me. Well, let's be honest. I delighted in the love my children have for me. It's something special when a child runs up to you and hugs your neck and says, "Daddy, I love you." And I, found great delight in that. But I think in terms of the other aspect of the question, has something to do with the different stages. Did I amply answer the one, or is there?
Well, I think what you've done is you've kind of given the mindset behind it, right? Because the question is relationship. How do you build that relationship so that your kids know you love them regardless of the training and discipline that's going on? So that's the mindset. Good.
So now going from a mindset to practicality.
Yeah, exactly.
I live in the ethereal, so this practical stuff, that was all Pat.
Hey, well, we'd love to have you.
Pat, be practical.
Come down to earth and join us. We'd love to have
you. That's so bad. Anyway, I think in terms of how to implement this, there are several things. Number one is, I guess I'm going back to the ethereal, is genuinely love them. I mean, in the same way that Christ loved you, love them genuinely. And if it's authentic and not manipulative, if it's not designed to elicit cooperation, but is despite their cooperation, and you genuinely love them, that love is going to prevail.
Now, maybe to help us understand more what you're talking about, like what would that not look like? What would the opposite look like? What would it look like for a parent to not love their children genuinely? Maybe can you give an example? Is that when I've parents just frustrated with their kid or just annoyed
frustration,
by their kid?
Annoyance, right? Frustration, annoyance, tolerance, just tolerating the child,
Yeah.
manipulating the child,
Yeah.
into doing things, bribing them with things so that they'll behave, or
Mm-hmm.
neglecting the discipline of them,
Mm-hmm.
and not saying, you know what, I don't like to spank, so I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Well, that's not loving the child; it's loving yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't like it, so I'm not going to do it, or I don't think it's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's helping,
Mm-hmm.
so forget it.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't love the child, right? Or being concerned about whether the children likes you.
Yeah.
Is not loving the child, right? The scripture talks about the fact that the person who spares the rod
Right.
hates his son.
Right.
So not loving a child is to not discipline them consistently.
Yeah.
Right? To love a child is to discipline them consistently, early. A child who is a threatening, repeating parent
Mm-hmm.
that just keeps threatening them. If you don't do this, then you're going to be in trouble, and then you repeat it 9 times.
Right.
And so you train your children to be disrespectful. You train your children to ignore you until the 9th time.
Right.
And then, okay, well, I've heard it 9 times now, so I better do it.
Better go along.
Trouble, So you train your children, and that's not loving your children. So being consistent, I think, is key.
Mm-hmm.
My wife, when our son Rich was just newly born, we had a conversation. I'll remember it. And she goes, "What are we going to do? How do we know that our children are going to turn out? I mean, how do we know that he's going to turn out?" And I'd say, well, we're going to love them, and we're going to be consistent. She goes, "Well, how do you know that's going to cause them to turn out?" I said, because it's the characteristic of Jesus' love for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we love because he first loved us, and he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Right. So we're going to emulate Christ, and we're going to be the same. We're going to be consistent, and we're going to truly, truly love them.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do what we do for their benefit, not for our benefit. And we're not going to try to parent them so we avoid being embarrassed by them, right? So a lot of parents, their threshold is just don't embarrass me.
Right.
Whatever it takes, just I don't want to be embarrassed with my kid. It's not about us. It's not about our embarrassment. It's about them and their knowing that we love them and are committed to them, and that we are reliable, dependable, authentic, genuine in our love for them.
Yeah.
Right? And the only way that message is going to get through is if it is true.
Right. Right.
So it needs to be true.
Yeah.
And then if you truly love them, then that message is going to get through.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to know that. It takes, when we discipline our children, when we had to chastise them, we never did so whimsically or capriciously.
Right.
They knew they were going to get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They knew they were going to get it.
Right.
They knew that that we're in the store and we say, when you get home, we're going to have to chastise you.
Yeah.
They knew when they got home, they were going to get chastised.
Right.
They might hope that we'll forget, but they pretty much knew, they're not going to forget.
Probably not going to happen.
They are devoted to this.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to chastise me.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew why, both with reference to the nature of the offense and how it brings discipline,
right,
and why as to our love for them that is causing us to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The old comment, honey, I just want you to know that this hurts me more than it does you. We didn't understand that when our parents said that to us, and our children didn't understand that until they became parents.
Yeah, sure.
But there was this awareness that my children knew that it hurt us to spank them.
Yeah.
It was not something we enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
And I've said to my children before, please do not make me do this.
Yeah.
Don't make me spank you.
Right.
it's your choice.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make me do it.
Mm-hmm.
You're choosing for me.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? And so they knew that I didn't like it and
Yeah.
didn't do it.
Yeah.
And you know, they preferred my spankings over Pat's.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because Pat was not afraid of hurting them. Right? She's so slight of frame that she would spank them and not, you know,
Yeah.
not. So as a result, it was more severe.
Mm.
Not because she's more severe of personality.
Right. You're trying to
But
measure yours. And,
I measured mine very,
Yeah.
very carefully, and
Yeah.
I did it in such a way as to physically restrain
Mm-hmm.
how hard I could spank.
Yeah.
Right. So I embraced them, and I spanked them this way, right,
Yeah.
from my elbow to the hand,
Right.
with my little piece of wood
Yeah.
that I used, and therefore I wasn't winding up, you know, like a
Yeah.
tennis racket and
Yeah.
coming through.
Yeah.
It was just very, and I did that as hard as I could
Mm-hmm.
because I knew that it was restricted and I wasn't going to hurt them.
Right.
But it got through, and I think when the relationship is there properly,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the strength with which you do it as much as the hurt and shame that somebody I love so much causing me to have to do this to them, and for somebody they love so much having to do it to them,
Mm-hmm.
that it was its own level
Yeah.
of consequence.
Yeah.
You know, that
Yeah.
existed.
Yeah.
So we never did it capriciously. They always knew what was happening, why it was happening, where it was happening. Then after it happened, there was always the restoration, and the
Right.
session was not completed until we were genuinely embracing.
Right. Right.
So there were times when we had to talk through attitudes
Mhm.
and different things that existed, confusion or whatever, until there was a genuine embrace. And it's
Yeah.
more than just,
Right.
you know,
Right.
so I saw Harper and Schwarber, Harper and what's his name? Schwarber?
Yeah.
Schwarber.
Yeah.
Harper and Schwarber embraced after
Right.
the home run.
Uh-huh.
It was like,
Right. Real kind of real quick.
yeah, real rough and quick.
Yeah. It's a bro
You know,
hug.
yeah,
It's a
it's
bro
not
hug.
like that.
Yeah.
There's intimacy to it. There's
Right.
genuineness to it.
Right.
Which, by the way, I'm for the Phillies in the series, so I'm grateful that that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
And I'm watching football.
That's right. Oh my goodness.
If the Cubs aren't in it, I'm out.
So the reality of consistency and compassion, if you
Mhm.
want to alliterate them, right? Consistency and compassion. And I think that those things need to be hand in hand
Yeah.
as we discipline our children.
Right.
And, you know, I think there needs to be the affirmation of love verbally.
Yeah.
They need to hear, you know,
Yeah.
Rich, I love you. William, I love you. Abby, love you. Lauren, love you. Susanna, I love you. Not in a Walton's format like, you know, John Boy, good night, but in a
Right.
genuine time
Yeah.
of individuality, not in the presence of others
Mhm.
all the time, but individual that you're looking them in the eye. They're
Mhm.
looking you in the eye.
Yeah.
And you say, I love you.
Yeah.
So that there's a genuine connection
Yeah.
there of
Yeah.
soul.
Right.
Right. And I think there needs to be endorsement of conduct as frequently as there is criticism of conduct.
Mm.
So when they do a good job, tell them that's a
Yeah.
great job.
Yeah.
You did a good job. You know,
Right.
thanks for
So
obeying.
You're not always just harping on them for
No.
where they've erred. You're also affirming them for where
Right,
they've
right.
excelled or succeeded.
But I think one of the things that's so important is you can't care. How do I say this right? You can't care whether they like you.
Or that can't be your primary concern. certainly.
Right.
It's nice if they like you.
My kid, one of my children said, "Dad, I hate you."
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You'll get over that.
Yeah.
And you're going to realize how much I love you.
Right.
Because I'm not really an easy guy to hate. Really. You know.
No, you're very lovable. Yeah, you're like a teddy bear.
Yeah, right. But that didn't send me
Yeah.
into a tizzy.
Right. Because like you said, your focus was not on, I mean, really your focus is not on just you and the child. Your focus is really, there's a three-way relationship. There's there's you and the child, but then there's also Christ.
Right.
And you're acting initially as a mediator, but your goal is really to bring those two together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I wasn't devastated when I was told they didn't like me or they hated me.
Yeah.
It was okay. They're a child.
Yeah.
You're a child.
Yeah.
You don't know what you want.
Right.
I'm going to love you anyway. Because it's not based on your merit.
Right.
Right. So it's okay. But so many parents parent in a way they think will cause the child to like them.
Right.
Because they don't want the child to rebel.
Right.
Not understanding
Right.
that indulging a child so that they'll like you is sowing the seeds of rebellion.
Right. It actually will cause them to despise you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can't do it that way.
Yeah.
You can't parent so that they'll like you.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a huge mistake.
Yeah.
That often is made.
Yeah.
You can't really have that as a priority. And what you're going to find is that when they're liking you is not your motivation, you receive the benefit of their liking you.
Yeah, sure.
It's
right.
It's a byproduct.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think, my big takeaway from that is the idea that you have to keep the primary goal in mind, which is that you're pointing them to Christ. Because I do think that oftentimes probably the problems for parents come into when we develop this hyper-focused view on just our relationship with our child.
Right.
And it almost becomes this idol, and you kind of lose the focus on, well, how do I navigate this? Because I got to get my kid to like me, right?
They're going to leave my home.
Right.
And by the time they leave my home, I'm an irrelevancy to them.
Mm-hmm.
In the grander scheme of things. Now, I'll never be an irrelevancy to my children.
Sure.
Because they truly love me.
Right.
And I truly love them.
Yeah.
So they'll call me and ask me advice, they ask my opinion, ask how I'm doing. They're almost on a daily basis, I get numbers of, well, no, it is on a daily basis. I get numbers of my children who call me.
Yeah.
And I love it. I delight in it. And I was at lunch today and one of my kids called me and I answered the phone.
Yeah.
They said, "Oh, it looks like you're at Brookfields." And I said, "How'd you guess?" But, I always answer my calls from my kids.
Yeah.
Now, there is that reality of the transition between when your children are real small to when they're elementary age, to when they're high school age, to when they're out of your house, right?
Yeah.
So there are 4 stages generally that you have to transition through, and you have to pray through when to make those transitions and how to make those transitions, how suddenly to make them, how gradually to make them, and so on.
Yeah.
So you go from when they're like 0 to 3 or 4, and you are a commander. Right. Do what I say right now. Yeah. And that's that.
Yeah.
Then you transition from being a commander to a coach, where you're letting them play the game, but you're giving instruction. They disregard your instruction. You have the ability to drop and give me 10.
There's still consequences.
Or run 5 laps or whatever. I had a coach in baseball that if I got caught watching a third strike go by, I had to run the bases 10 times after a game. Yeah. So I never wanted to watch a pitch go by.
You were taking a cut.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was up there to hit.
Yeah.
And that's one way he stopped me from hoping I'll get a walk. Just be a hitter. And the coach had consequences if I didn't do what he told me to do.
Yeah.
Or if I failed in expectations or whatever it is. So you still have consequences. You're still able to impose those consequences.
Right.
Some of them are going to be natural consequences that you utilize. Some of them are going to be imposed consequences. Right. But it's not like when you were a commander and you say, do what I say right now or else. As a coach, you give instruction, but then you let them play. Right? You let them play. And then you move from that coach to a counselor where you're giving them advice and you're letting them make their own mistakes. Right? And that's from like 12, 13, 14-ish, all the way through 18, 19, 20-ish.
Yeah.
You're a counselor. You're giving advice. And when you have influence in their life, you're not trying to have control. You're striving after influence. And you have influence in your life. They want to know what you think. Right. There were times when my children came to me and said, "Dad, tell me what to do." I said, "I'm not telling you what to do. Just tell me what to do. I'll do it. I want to know what I need to do." "No, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You need to do what you think is right. Right. And if you make a mistake, it's okay. I'm not going to let you make a mistake that's going to be devastating,
Right.
but I'm going to let you make some mistakes.
Right.
And so you go, but Dad, just tell me. No, I'm not going to do that. Right. So other times when I thought it was helpful to give them the advice, I would give them the advice.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
what being a counselor is, right?
Sure.
So you just, help them through.
Yeah.
And then now I'm in the role of a consultant, right? That's the high pay job.
Right.
And
so say you can charge some hefty fees as a consultant.
So I'm a consultant, and that means that I'm available to come in on a specialized event. I had one of my children call me about this Halloween thing.
Mm-hmm.
Dad, how do I tell them this? Or is it okay if they wear this mask? Or, whatever, whatever it is. And I'm just a consultant.
Yeah.
So it's a blessing.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't make the transitions,
right,
then you breed resentment and rebellion. And your relationship with them suffers. Right. You smother them.
Yeah.
You can't transition too early.
Yeah.
And you can't transition too late.
Yeah.
So you really need to pray and discuss it with others and get advice and work through these things so that you're transitioning properly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's helpful. Yeah, there's a lot there. I feel like I could probably have this conversation with you 3 times and take away different things from it. But I'm grateful for just the wealth of parenting advice you have. And my encouragement to you is that when you go on vacation with Pat this next week, you guys need to finish your parenting book.
Yeah, that's our goal.
It's time.
We're close.
I was telling Natalie, I was like, I'm going to be frustrated when they finally publish it when our boys are both teenage, when they're both out of the house.
That's right.
And I'm like, man, they're so messed up now. It's too late. I needed this book like 15 years ago.
That's
so
right.
no, but we're grateful for your wisdom and it's just immensely helpful. In church, we trust that this helped you, especially you parents out there. But I would even say to those of you maybe who don't have your own kids, I think you have a profound influence in the lives of children. You can help. You can come alongside parents and help them. And I think parents always need help. So I think for everyone, this is a helpful discussion. So I appreciate you, Pastor Rick. Hope you have a great vacation and knock that book out. We're eager for it.
We'll see you,
Church, we'll see you next week on another edition of Living by the Book.